If you collect Sonic action figures, you probably fall into one of two camps. You're either someone who wants to have epic battles and adventures with them, or you're an adult who puts them in a display case as a coping mechanism for some undiagnosed emotional trauma. These are all mine! Sonic Rumble is the new Sonic game that takes the first of those two ideas. What if you made a Sonic game where you don't play as Sonic, but you play as someone who took their favourite Sonic action figures to their friend's house to have an epic battle or adventure with? Every character you see here isn't supposed to be one of the Sonic cast, it's supposed to be an action figure of them that someone else is playing with. Believe it or not, they have written a story to explain this. You're supposed to be Dr. Eggman coming up with plans and using the toys in order to test them out, but for the build of the game that I have, there isn't really an explanation, so I'm going off the premise that I came up with. You've gone to your friend's house and you've took your favourite Sonic toy. But who cares how you want to explain it? The premise is just so cool. The idea that someone is playing with a huge collection of action figures, it's got a lot of potential. It's just a question of what's been done with it. Well, before I try to answer that, I should mention that the game has been out in a few test territories for several months on mobile devices. But I'm not playing the mobile version. A few weeks ago, the people behind the game opened the Sonic Rumble Creator Program, and for reasons I don't understand, they decided to accept me onto it! And they also gave me an early copy of the PC Steam port to review, and yeah, this could be very dangerous for us both. But anyway, let's start with a very simple question. Have they made any effort to port this game over from mobile? Well, the answer to that is sort of. To Rumble's credit, there have been some accommodations made for PC users. You can fully customize your controls, play in a preferred window type, VSync is here, along some generic low, medium and high graphical settings, which unfortunately, you can't mess around with for any more detail. And that's about it. And as for if your system will run it, I suspect most computers sold down at the local greengrocer should be able to handle it. Look, I'm not the best person to talk technical details when it comes to PC ports, but there are some issues with the design that show it was a mobile game first, which the devs haven't quite accounted for in the transition to the PC market. Obviously, model details are a little bit lacking, but there are a few more questionable things that I'll mention later on. For now, let's talk about the gameplay. When you first start the game, you'll be asked to pick a starting character from a list of all your favourite Sonic characters, so I picked everybody's favourite dark and mysterious creature, Default the Wolf! If you think I did that as just a cheap and terrible joke, no, I didn't really have much of a choice, this was it. I really wish I'd been recording footage of my first time starting the game to show you this, but you can't actually pick a Sonic character to start with. Your options are a choice of the avatar characters from Sonic Forces, and once you make your selection, that's it. You can't swap to another or pick anyone else from the main cast of Sonic characters. This is a Sonic game where you can't play as Sonic unless you buy him from a shop or get very lucky with one of the promotions. And I might be alone with this, but I don't think this is a good idea. For a game whose main appeal is play with your favourite Sonic toys, I can't actually pick a Sonic toy to start the game. Guys, let me pick someone from the main cast. I'm more likely to stick around for longer if I'm playing as a character I like to start with, and more inclined to buy variants of them if I end up enjoying myself. So when I did eventually buy Sonic from the pet store, I couldn't help but laugh that in a game about Sonic the Hedgehog, which title is Sonic Rumble, the character, Sonic the Hedgehog, is considered a rare character to play. So for the first 24 hours, I couldn't actually play as a Sonic character, but that's fine, because Default and I are off to the Rumble. Let's talk about the gameplay. Now, there's no way I can talk about gameplay without mentioning the bean-shaped elephant in the room. Hey, does anybody else out there think this looks a bit like Fall Guys? And visually, yeah, you'd be forgiven for thinking it was just a Sonic clone of that. However, the gameplay does have a few differences, and in some areas, it's more complicated to make it stand out from that title. So like with Fall Guys, you participate in events. Each event is split into 3 rounds or games, but the winner isn't necessarily decided by whoever wins a race, it's a point-based system, so if you destroy Badniks, collect rings, and attack other players, you'll have a bigger advantage going into the next round than simply rushing to the end. You know, I actually kinda like this, because it means you can design levels with intentionally slower but more rewarding paths. Players have some incentive to take these routes over the most obvious speedy one. Now that said, there is one thing that I'm not a big fan of, and it's that the stages feel way easier and more forgiving than the Bean game counterpart. There's a distinct lack of stages where the platforms are only wide enough for 1 or 2 players. In most areas, you won't have any problems going where you need to go because the stages are wide enough to accommodate everybody. And this means that you lose part of the thrill and the drama that comes from merely navigating the stage itself. To put it another way, in Sonic Rumble, it feels like just a normal race between you and the other players. In Fall Guys, it feels more like a battle between you, the other players, and the layout of the stage itself. Take a look at this clip if you still don't know what I mean. The game begins with 24 players. The starting level design is pretty good for this number. There's only 2 paths ahead of you, not enough space to accommodate everybody. You're going to have to brute force and try and deal with other players ahead of you getting in the way. But look how quickly this no longer becomes the case. The pathway opens up and now there's 3 possible routes to take, which then further divide a few moments later. Very quickly, the player finds themselves on their own. There's nobody else around, and even in the next section, nobody else can be seen. And loads of stages become like this. You'll be in a game which has 24 players to start with and just be on your own for a huge chunk wondering, where is everybody? Going back to this clip again, imagine how much more exciting it would be if there was only 1 or 2 routes through this whole section. Suddenly you have 24 players all fighting for the same path. The problem is that the level design for virtually every stage has been made for a lobby of 100 people, yet the maximum you can have is 24. It just means that stages aren't as thrilling as they could be because you lose that added element of the other players themselves becoming an obstacle to the level itself. Several stages have been designed with multiple pathways, and this in theory should be a really good thing. Take Fall Guys once again as the example. There's multiple stages in that game that have a faster pathway, but these are much harder to navigate. They're full of hazards and designed so that only a limited number of players can use them at a time. This means that by the very nature of their level design, the stages in Fall Guys are much harder to cross if you're going for the faster route, and eventually they become a bit of a bottleneck as multiple players try to get through them. You add in all the stage hazards and suddenly players are failing to cross them. But this is where the level design in Fall Guys has a neat trick up its sleeve. In some cases, players may want to take the slower pathway by choice. If the faster pathway is too congested and dangerous, why take the risk? Go the slower way. This means that, no, you probably won't overtake the guy in first place, but who cares? You might get ahead of the mass of people trying and failing to cross the faster route, and then you'll qualify to the next round. Now, Sonic Rumble does have stages where there are multiple pathways to take, and one is clearly the faster, more preferred route. But the problem with this level design is that there's virtually no issue with taking the faster path. The stage hazards are too easy to deal with, there's too few players to worry about congestion, so just take the faster pathway every time, because there's never any risk to doing so. Now, Rumble does do a few things to try and mitigate this problem. For one thing, stages have power-ups. You've got shields, speed boosters, and you also gain the ability to perform a homing attack which lets you steal rings from your opponents. Another way in which the gameplay stands out is through the use of buddies. You can equip Chow and other characters to follow you around, and these provide some small bonuses to your game. This buddy is called the Content Creator Chow, and he's got better equipment than I do! If I equip this guy and take him into a game, as long as I don't respawn, he'll give me a bonus to any rings I collect. Well, what a nice guy! Normally content creators are the ones asking you for money. Please support me on Patreon. And I have been told that even different characters and different character skins will also have perks and abilities, but since that's not available in this build, I can't really say what they will be. However, what I can comment on is that I fear this may present a problem when it gets fully implemented once the game is eventually released. Once you start giving characters in your game individual perks and abilities, it means that they're no longer equal. Some will have advantages over others, and as a consequence, there's going to be a shift from the player's skill and knowledge of the game towards what's considered the best character, especially if those characters are locked behind some kind of paywall. And the reason why I fear this may happen is because it sort of already is happening even in the beta. Members of the Sonic Rumble Discord already have a tier list of the recommended buddies you should be using. Even if you do happen to get one that has one of the better bonuses, your problems don't end there, because now you find yourself locked into a Chow Garden-inspired arms race against other players because bodies can be upgraded. So these perks, which are quite powerful to start with, can be upgraded, making them even more powerful. Some of these are so ridiculous that you'll start to realise you'll need to play with specific buddies and eventually playable characters, as well as being forced to engage with the resource economy just to stay on par with everyone else. You know, I'm not sure this is a good idea. This is a genre in which the long-term health will utterly depend on people being able to play as their favourite character or using accessories and costumes that they think look cool while still having an equal chance to win. But if a player's favourite character or accessory just doesn't have a good perk or ability tied to it, they're less likely to stick around long term if they just can't compete against players who are prepared to forego playing as their favourite character if it means they're more likely to win. Even I'm falling into this trap and becoming part of the problem. Out of all the buddies I've unlocked so far, my favourite is this Content Creator Chow, but I don't use it anymore even though I really want to, because this Golden Chow, which I don't particularly like the look of, has a way better bonus. Okay, so I need to do a bit of an update here, since in the days since I recorded this, I've actually learned a little bit more about how the game actually works. When it comes to the game's scoring system, Sonic Rumble isn't easy to understand. Almost daily there's somebody asking about it in the official Discord, and it's also been a topic in a few of the feedback surveys, which would suggest that the devs know it's not as clear as it could be. So let me explain how I now think it works. The main game mode that you can play is Ring Survival. 3 rounds, and the winner is the one who has the most rings at the end. Now the confusion surrounds the fact that the game also awards points for doing stuff like defeating enemies, collecting rings, and even using an emoji, but these points don't dictate if you win or lose a round. Well, in that case, why did I just spend a chunk of time talking about perks and buddies if the points you get from those don't actually go towards if you win a game or not? Well, this is where another part of the confusion comes into play. Points don't contribute to your final place in a round, but they do contribute to the wider competitive meta gameplay. Every time you complete a round, you get a rank based on how many points you collected, but this rank is extremely difficult to improve upon unless you have multiple good perks on your character and you level them up. When you first start the game and play with one of the stock characters, like say Default the Wolf, who hasn't yet unlocked a buddy, it's virtually impossible to get a decent rank. Even now, several weeks later, when I have more experience with the game, I can't get anything higher than a C rank. It's that difficult. Now, when I use this standard Sonic character and give him the Golden Chow, I can regularly get a B rank, and maybe if I'm very lucky, I'll also hit A. But this Rouge the Bat character has more perk slots, so if I give her the same Golden Chow, I can now make it into rank A way more regularly, and if I have a very good game, I'll even hit S rank. And if say I was to unlock a legendary character or further upgrade both the Chow and Rouge the Bat, I'd almost certainly be hitting S ranks more regularly. Wait, do you see the problem with what I've just described? The game isn't rewarding players for skillful play, it's rewarding them for their ability to shop and upgrade their characters. But wait a second, other than this being a little bit weird, if points and rank don't affect your in-game placements, what's the issue? Well, the first issue is that your points do contribute to a global leaderboard which rewards you based on your final position at the end of a season. The rewards that you can get based on your position include red rings, which are used to directly access playable content such as characters and buddies. More on why this is important a little bit later. And if you're now thinking, well, I don't care about my rank, I only care about winning games. Well, you see, the thing is, you kind of have to care about the ranking system if you want to win a game. So the ranking system has unlockable content tied to it, and some of this unlockable content drastically improves your chances to win. But let's not worry about that. I'm sure it won't come back to haunt us as we talk about the other thing that this game does to try and be more unique from its competitors: emotes. Some of you are now probably thinking, what are you talking about? Virtually every multiplayer game has these. And yes, that's true, but some of these affect gameplay. So this might become one of the most controversial aspects of the whole game, especially when it comes to balancing and fairness of each player. When you first start out, you get given a single emote which lets you jump into the air and celebrate, but this doesn't actually impact the game or any of the players around you. However, other emotes do. This one lets you perform a slide, and some players have realised it can be used to get a head start for races or even outpace an opponent. Oh, I wonder if this could be that rank unlockable I was talking about in the previous section that drastically improves your chances to win. Seriously, whilst it has a cooldown, if you don't have this emote equipped, you will lose games. It's ridiculous how powerful it is. Now, this particular emote is locked behind a challenge requirement, and it took me a few days to unlock it. But imagine if it was locked behind a paywall like some of the others are. Here's another one which I think may cause problems with the balancing later on. What does it do? It lets you punch other players. Yeah, so this lets you literally punch other players, and it actually can knock them off platforms. For a limited time, there was an emote that was exclusive to Tails that gave him an arm cannon that allowed you to shoot people. Oh, but surely it can't be that powerful. I mean, it's Tails, for goodness sake. How devastating could it— Tails, no! Now, fortunately, there's not really any stages in which using an emote like this could be a viable tactic, but the moment that stages are added which do take this into consideration, you're going to see players using these en masse. And if you haven't unlocked them, or God forbid they're hidden behind some kind of expensive paywall, you're kinda stuck. But who cares about its impact on the gameplay? The fact you have an ability which allows you to punch other players means that canonically, we have a Sonic game that allows you to walk up to Cream the Rabbit. Sonic, no! So strictly speaking, yes, Rumble does do a few things to make it more of a unique experience to other games in the genre. But is it a fun experience? Well, if the stages were more of a challenge, I think it could be a lot more enjoyable. As I mentioned earlier, Rumble stages are just too forgiving. Even with a full lobby of players, nothing feels that challenging. Stages aren't designed so that the players themselves become an obstacle to each other, and for those players who do get a big lead, the only thing that hinders their progress are the breakable walls that require multiple hits. I honestly think that the best thing that this game could do for its future would be to put stages in that would be a challenge for even an individual player to complete. It would do a lot for making stages more fun to play, especially outside of party play mode. modes. And on the subject of the gameplay, I feel that there's a huge missed opportunity with the very nature of the premise that they've not quite capitalized on. If the idea behind this game is, we're playing with our collection of action figures, where are the boss battles? Now before somebody yells at me, yes, technically there are boss encounters, but you can't defeat them. With the Death Egg robot, you don't even attack it, you've got to aim for the treasure chest on its back and get points for each hit. But this feels like it's crying out to be a gameplay mode, some kind of event where players have to work together to destroy a major boss. It would certainly be similar to how I used to play with action figures with my friends. We'd gather them all up and fight a more powerful foe, or even create a fortified base and attack it. Lean more into this idea that we're kids playing with our collection of toys. Hey, what's all this footage that's playing on the screen right now? So it turns out this game does have a mode that behaves precisely as I described. The problem is that it's separate from the main gameplay type and it only appears for 2 hours every couple of days. For the first week that I had the game, I wasn't even aware that this boss fight mode existed. Once I learned that it was in the game, I was still locked out from playing it for several days. Once the game let me in, there was 2 bosses available, a standard Death Egg robot and a stronger elite version, both of which behave in exactly the same way. 32 players have to work together to target specific weak points in order to drain its health and gain points. The main way to do this is to defeat enemies which also spawn in the stage. Doing so will grant you a homing attack, and you can use this to target one of the weak points on the boss. Targets close to the ground give less points than those higher up, so you're encouraged to use springs and time your jumps in order to reach them. It takes longer, but it's more rewarding. Visually, it looks really cool, and even conceptually, you do feel like you're in a group of friends playing with action figures against a much stronger foe. It'd be even better if it was actually fun to play. This gameplay mode is not fun. The biggest issue with this mode is that it's just boring. There really isn't very much to it. Just collect a power-up and target the boss. Repeat until you defeat it. After the second time I defeated one of these, I was just about done. I'd seen everything that it had to offer. Literally, the only reason I kept replaying it is because, well, due to the nature of my channel and this video, I wanted to figure out exactly why it's not very good and what was going on. And I came to the realization that the boss isn't very well designed because it doesn't actually reward skillful play as much as it rewards exploiting a specific item. So this mode has 2 victory conditions. The first is defeating the boss in the time limit, and the second is get more points than everybody else in the game. Now you'd think that because the higher targets require more skill to reach and award more points, you should be going for those, right? Well yeah, you could do that, or you could aim for this small cluster down here that anyone can reach and win every game. The higher targets take so long to reach that you can get more points just by hitting the lower ones more frequently with less risk. But more crucially, the key to winning is just by exploiting this item. This is a special version of the homing attack that upon impact creates an area of effect around it, which means that you can use it to hit multiple weak points, and these are treated as individual hits, so the number of points you get is greater than a single strike on even the most lucrative target on the entire boss. The higher you go, the more spread out the targets are, so this area of effect can't hit a second, meaning you never have any reason to use it on anything other than the easiest targets, which were already the best targets to go for even without this upgrade. And whilst this item is a random drop, it's not exactly a rare drop. You can get this over and over and get so many points from doing so little that nobody else can compete against you unless they're also doing this. I figured this out on my second game. I was going to say I don't understand how the developers missed this out of their design phase, but honestly, the game kind of encourages you to do this. After a few hits, the boss becomes stunned and starts to take additional damage, so the game's design is subconsciously encouraging you to go for the lower targets and to use this special item against those, because the more targets hit means the stunned phase appears sooner, the boss takes more damage, and the team is more likely to succeed. So the game isn't rewarding your skill and ability, it's rewarding you on how lucky you get with an upgraded item against the easiest targets. But another reason why I just don't like these boss fights, they're kinda buggy. It's very easy to become stagger locked or just get stuck on the boss itself. In this clip, I became stuck on its shoulder for a few seconds. The only reason I can break free is because I happened to have a homing attack ready and a target came into range and I was able to lock on and free myself. But in this clip, I'm constantly getting battered around and there's nothing I can do. Eventually I become trapped on its arm and I can't do anything right now until the boss decides to move. Along with making the fights just frustrating to play, this tends to happen more frequently when you go for the more lucrative higher targets, so the game further incentivizes you to just go for the easy ones purely if you want a smoother gaming experience. I sort of understand now why they locked this mode away for several days, it's just not fun to play. So let's move on and talk about one of the main draws of the game that people actually seem to agree is pretty awesome: the alternative characters, or rather the alternative character skins that you can get. You can have Big the Cat as a Fisherman, Rockstar Rouge, Pirate Shadow, Gothic Amy. Did they turn Sonic into Elton John? And I can't lie, it really does bring a smile to my face during a loading screen when I can see all the characters I've collected so far are cheering and waving me on. And I've started to notice that there's sort of a pseudo role-playing element going on within the game itself. I've seen players make Gothic Amy gangs, and I love this one screenshot of Amy and Rouge asleep and Charmy telling other players to be quiet, don't wake them up. I really hope it won't be too restrictive to unlock all these costumes on the full public release, since this is probably going to be the thing that makes players stick around for a while. Oh yeah, before we go any further, do you remember how a little while ago I said this? There are some issues with the design that show it was a mobile game first, which the devs haven't quite accounted for in the transition to the PC market. Well, now's the time! So in my original script, I did have a huge section here about how cluttered the main menu UI gets and how it doesn't quite work for a PC as opposed to, say, a mobile device. However, I think this point explains that issue a lot better. So for those of you who've been watching this video closely, how many of you out there have noticed that in every single clip of the game I've shown so far, that the power-up icons are quite ginormous? No, they're not massively encroaching onto the gameplay area, but for power-up icons, they take up quite a significant chunk of it. Why are they not the size of these icons? You know, the ones that you use to emote and communicate? Wait a second. Why do I need these icons at all? It's not like a PC player needs that. Just press a button on the controller or the keyboard and... Oh no! Once you realise why the power-up icons here are so large, you can't help but chuckle just a little bit. The game was made for mobile first, and what's the primary method to control a game on a mobile device? The screen! So the UI has to artificially place buttons or icons on the screen for the player to interact with. So these icons are a leftover design trait from the mobile version of the game where the screen is the controller. But on PC, you don't need this. The primary method to play games on a PC is a keyboard and mouse or controller, but the devs haven't removed the mobile UI yet, so all this stuff is just here taking up space for no reason. Now there is another issue that I was going to highlight, and again it's to do with the UI. A lot of the main menu icons aren't that intuitive as to what they really mean, but there's a hilarious example of this lack of intuitive design that directly affects the gameplay, and well, I think it's best you take a look. Once a stage is selected, you've only got a few seconds before it starts, so the developers only have a few moments to tell the player what to do, and they need to make that crystal clear. Either give a brief, clear to the point instruction, or use the level design to communicate intent. Dash to the goal, defeat the enemy, stay on the glowing path. I love it, let's glow! These are good clear sets of instructions that makes it obvious what you've got to do. Now take a look at this one. The first team to score 6 goals wins. So naturally, you're probably thinking, well, there's a giant ball in front of me. Score goals to win? That's how you score, right? So we put it in the target and, oh, nothing happened. And as you get further through the stage, there's more of these things and absolutely no means to score. In this clip, you can see that I slightly deviate from my forward progression because I'm trying to interact and investigate any object that stands out just to see if it's a means to score points. Score goals to win! How? By this point, our opponents have figured out what to do, and now we're down a point. Oh, sorry, 2 points. Oh wait, they've now got 3 points! Sonic fans would have an easier time trying to score on Tinder than they would in this game. So do you want to know how you score points in this game? Well, it's simple. To score a goal, you've just got to get to the end of the race. Oh no, there's nothing for you to do at the end of the race. You just cross the finish line. That's it. That's how you score a goal. But then why isn't the instruction just dash to the goal, like it is for every other race in the game? So why did I just spend a couple of minutes talking about this? This seems like a really weird thing to harp on about. Because of the effect it's having on the player base. This gameplay mode doesn't appear very often, but every time I've played it, there's always a good chunk of players who don't understand what the game's asking them to do. More often than not, they'll stop trying to get to the end of the course and just explore the stages looking for ways to trigger a point. In most games that I've seen, people tend to quit this mode because it looks like they're doing actions which should be fulfilling that initial instruction, which also remains on screen during the actual game itself. Score 6 goals, but it's not working, so they think that the stage is bugged and decide to quit, especially if they see that their opponents are somehow scoring points and about to take the win. Why would they stick around if they think they're playing something that's broken? They'll just quit and reload. Take a look at this footage. My team is in the blue and this is the very last segment of the course. All we have to do to win is jump into these pipes. We should have this victory in the bag. But almost nobody from my team follows me to the finish line because they're confused, wondering how come they haven't scored a goal yet. So right now you're probably thinking, well, maybe this is just a one-off. Well, that's certainly a possibility, except there's another variant of this mode and the exact same thing happens. In this version of the game, all you have to do is climb a tower and get to the finish line. In the footage you're looking at, most of my team are very experienced with the game, so they knew what they had to do. But look what happens at the end. 5 of us cross the finish line, and for well over a minute, not one other player joins us. But that's nothing compared to what's going on with the red team. By chance, Sam's procrastination station was streaming this particular game, and he was on the opposite team, and from his perspective, the nightmare had only just begun. When the game begins, you can see that his team becomes active and starts looking for means to score goals, but as the game continues, he doesn't realise that the only other player on his team that's following him is the other content creator that's joined him for his stream. Once he gets to the final platform, he's still completely unaware that nobody else from his team is with him, because they're trying to find ways to score goals earlier in the stage. When he does eventually cross the finish line, it suddenly dawns on him nobody else from his team is there. He begins to scream in desperation, "Where is my team?"
Red team, clock in.
It's okay. It's okay.
Red team, red
One
team.
more to go.
Red team.
One more to go.
Where's my team? Why is no one up there?
You can even see his eyes dash all over the screen as he desperately tries to find anyone from his team as the full horror of what's happening begins to set in.
Oh no! Where are they?
Oh, this
They're-
Where's
Wait.
red team? They're throwing.
Dude.
They're still not here.
This is not an exaggeration. For nearly an entire minute after he finishes, not one other player from his team figures out that you need to cross the finish line to score a goal. Everyone else thinks the way you score points is further down the course, so they're not crossing the finish line because they believe that will remove them from the game and not add to the score. And the only reason this went on for so long is because my team is experiencing a similar problem. Even in Sam's footage, you can see me and my team are just waiting for one other player to figure out what to do and join us. Score goals to win! Also, this game did provide me with one unintentional bit of hilarity, which I just thought was amazing. When I synced the footage of mine and Sam's game together, Blaze the cat is rocking out to the sounds of Sam swearing and screaming about how useless his team is, as if she's enjoying his pain.
This is bull. Oh my god! I want the names. I want the list of every person who was on red. Where are they? Oh no! Where are they?
Oh, this
They're-
Where's red team? They're throwing.
Anyway, let's move on now. Just joking, here's another example. In this footage I recorded, the situation got so bad that neither team could get a winning score. So many players either quit or ran back through the stage to try and figure out how to score points that the game ended with a timeout and was decided on a tie-break Oh, I love team games. And right about here is where I was supposed to start talking about the in-game economy and begin my conclusion. But two amazing things happened at once which potentially ruins all the work I've put into this video so far. The first of those things, Sonic Rumble got delayed, and then the new update came out which potentially undermines most of the work I've put into this project, and whilst I could have just scrapped the entire video, I felt it was important to leave it in because quite a lot of it still applies when you look into the detail of how the game works now. And I also spent weeks working on this, so fuck you, I'm leaving it in. But before we get into it, I do want to read you a tiny bit from my original video's conclusion. The most remarkable thing about Sonic Rumble is just how unremarkable it is, and I know that sounds amazingly harsh to say because it's not a bad game, it's nowhere near that. It just doesn't do anything that really hooks you into coming back for more. Once you've played it for a few hours, you've pretty much seen everything. But if the stage is not really offering much of a challenge, you've likely mastered most of it. Outside of grinding resources for alternative costumes, there really is no reason to keep coming back for more. And for me, that's just not enough. So let's now take a look at the new update and see if that conclusion is still valid. Also, I'm going to state now, if there is another update that drops by the time I finish this video, sorry, I'm not changing it again, I've delayed this video enough. The first significant change is what they did to buddies. The entire scoring system that was originally tied to them has been simplified. All this stuff? That's gone. There's no more buddy-specific perks. Buddies instead will give you a flat rate percentage boost to your score at the end of a stage. This means that players no longer have to pick buddies based on their perks. I can play as this content creator Chow and it gives me no less of an advantage as, say, playing as this golden one. This is a fantastic change. Players can now pick a buddy based on what they think looks cool over what's going to give them a bigger advantage. Wait a second, this buddy has a bigger percentage bonus, so shouldn't that be the preferred one to use? Well, no, and that's another part of the beauty of this change. This buddy might only give a 1% bonus to your score, whereas this one gives 25%. The game adds these together, so you now have a 26% bonus to your score regardless as to which one you pick. And the best part about this? Characters and different character variants also give a score bonus. Common skins give you a small boost, but legendaries give you a huge increase. All of this is added together with the buddies to give you a huge increase in your score each time you play. Currently, whatever I score at the end of a game is increased by 920%. And any future buddy or character I get from any source, be it an in-game reward, the shop, a season pass, a special event, it all contributes to this percentage. This is fantastic. It means I can use any character or buddy in any combination and my score won't be hindered. Well, what a great update. I'm sure nobody's going to find a problem with all this. When you design a scoring system for a video game, you'll often tie other systems into that which also need to be carefully configured. Scoring systems don't just impact how your players are rewarded, but also how likely they are to keep coming back for more. Take the ranking system as an example. Too hard and players are likely to just give up. Too easy and players will feel patronised or become bored and go and look for something more entertaining to do. You want to have it so that the player feels like they've made a significant effort to get A or S ranks, but not to the point where it's near unforgivable. Especially if that game has Sonic the Hedgehog in it and is also free to play. You want to design your ranking system so players have to put in some effort, because once they earn a good rank, they feel like they've just done something pretty cool and are more likely to come back for more. And you can expand on this system. You could tie rewards into it and even have leaderboards that log total points and gives out prizes based on a player's final position. Both of these things Rumble does. The thing is though, if you have a scoring system up and running in your video game, if you suddenly change how the scores are calculated, it's going to mess up all this stuff too. Remember how earlier I said this? The game isn't rewarding players for skillful play, it's rewarding them for their ability to shop and upgrade their characters. Well, shouldn't the fact you can now play as any character or buddy fix this? Well, the answer to that is no. The problem's gotten worse because this thing doesn't stop increasing. If you thought my score bonus of 920% was a lot, someone managed to get 3,613, but that's nothing compared to this guy. No, not that guy, this one. Let me explain why I think this is a bit of an issue. Hypothetically, let's imagine that all four of us played a game and we each scored 100 points. My bonus would bump that to 1,020. Even when you compare that score to what the lowest of my opponents gets, I'd have to play 4 games for every one that they do just to break even. For the highest percentage, I've got to do 7. Even the new Rumble ranking system, which was literally introduced the day after I recorded this bit, is affected by the bonus percentage system. I went from 0 to over 300,000 points, but as you can see from these two results screens, the only reason that happened is because my bonus percentage was adding hundreds of thousands of points to what I actually scored. A brand new way to compete and climb! How? It is literally impossible to compete against those at the top of the leaderboard unless your bonus percentage is in the literal thousands. Well, just hang on a second, the solution is obvious. Stop complaining and go get more bonuses. Well, to that I say, you're right, I could just go and increase my own bonus percentage. That's a great idea. Me? All I need are more characters and buddies. Remind me again how I go about doing that? And any future buddy or character I get from any source, be it an in-game reward, the shop, a season pass, a special event, it all contributes to this percentage. So this game has a season pass, and it's one of the main causes of player imbalance when it comes to the scoring system and fair play. The best way to increase your bonus percentage is to get legendary skins. They give a much bigger increase than the others do. But if you want to compete against players at the top of the leaderboards, there's only one option open to you. In order to increase your bonus percentage to where it needs to be, you have to spend real-world money on the 2 premium season passes and in the Red Ring store. No, I didn't make a mistake there, this game does have 2 premium season passes per season. If you decide to go down the free-to-play route, you're effectively locked out of the competitive metagame play, as you'll never be put on an equal footing. You could be the legitimate greatest player of all time to the point where other players would eventually sing songs about your exploits, but the game itself doesn't care about how good you are. It only cares about your character roster and rewards you based on who you have in it. Before I get accusations about making a big deal over nothing, let me just remind you, the leaderboards and Rumble rankings reward you based on your final position. One such prize is Red Rings, and as I'll explain in a moment, the end of season ranking is vital to acquiring some of the costume character variants. So for free-to-play players who are legitimately good at the game, it's never going to reward them for the effort that they put in. And if you're one of those people who just doesn't care about the leaderboards or that kind of metagame play, well, good for you! Except you'll find this new scoring system also impacts your end level ranking rewards in some very comical ways. Earlier in the video, I mentioned that if I use Rouge and the Gold Golden Chow, I could get A ranks more often, but I still had to put in some effort in order to get an S rank. And because there's rewards for getting higher ranks, if I wanted to unlock them, the emphasis of the effort was on me to become better and more skillful at the game. Do you see what the game's doing here and how clever this design is? It's giving you two incentives to replay the game in order to become better at it, both in-game rewards and your own personal challenge of simply getting a higher rank. This is a really great piece of single-player design in a multiplayer game. I sure hope they don't ruin all that. So here's how they ruined all that. When I started to play this update, I noticed I was getting S ranks in every game I played. It didn't seem to matter how good I was, the game kept rewarding me with them. How many of you listening to this has figured out why? The devs changed the scoring system so you now get more points each time you play, but they didn't change the rank requirements to compensate for that. This means that players are now finding it easier to get higher ranks, regardless as to how well they play. So you've now got stages which aren't that difficult to beat, which now reward S ranks for doing barely anything. It just means the whole experience is now a little bit patronizing to the player. Yay, I got an S rank! But I didn't really do anything. Oh, you think I'm exaggerating? Well, take a look at this. The lowest possible rank you can get in Sonic Rumble is a D. So what happens if I start a stage, collect 3 rings, go back to the starting line, maybe play a game of patty cake or 2, and then I just do nothing? I just sit here until everybody else finishes. What rank does the game think this is worth? Okay, let's try something else. This time, I'll just sit here. I won't do anything. This kind of exciting gameplay is rewarded with... Oh, you're taking the piss, video game! I'm quite alone with this, but I often call Sonic games made between 2011 to the present day the spectacle era, because this is when they stopped caring about what the player did. The emphasis of the effort shifted from the player to the game itself. Getting epic moments isn't rewarded for your own skill and ability, just merely getting to a specific point regardless as to how you got there is just going to trigger them automatically. I have a theory as to why this is, but that's for another video. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we now have a Sonic game where just standing still at the start rewards you with an A rank. But that's nothing compared to this. Right at the start of this level is 30 rings, so I collected them and went back to the starting line. But I thought to myself, that's quite a lot, it's not really a fair test. But I kept recording anyway just to see what would happen. So I've got 30 rings and I'm clearly in last place in a race. What do you think the game's gonna do? So not only did I get an S rank, I actually qualified to the next round. I didn't know this at the time, but if a race ends with a timeout, it doesn't eliminate the players who failed across the finish line. It instead decides who goes through to the next round based on their ring total. And because I collected 30 rings and just sat at the starting line, even though every other player had made an effort to progress through the stage, the game didn't care. It only cared about our ring total. It really does make you wonder, doesn't it? What would happen if every single player in a race collected the same number of rings then just sat there at the starting line doing nothing? How does the game decide who goes through? Well, anyway, I think we've talked for way too long about the game's new scoring system, so let's now talk for too long about the other major addition that's been added to the game, the skill system. Do you remember early in the video where I talked about how some emotes could affect gameplay? Of course you do, don't deny it. I can see you nodding thanks to the hidden cameras I had secretly installed in your house. Why yes, that is the FBI in the van across the street. Well, those emotes have been turned into character skills. Characters can equip a universal or a unique skill and ability. The idea is they should shake up the gameplay a bit and give players more tactics and really think about what they're doing. Under the old system, emotes weren't that useful. I said that the devs would probably have to design future stages to take full advantage of them. Well, they don't need to worry about that anymore, because these skills are so powerful, it's already having an effect on the original levels. And it's not just stuff like knocking players off platforms that's improved. You can get advantages in running races, collecting rings easier, and even skipping out entire platforming segments. Let me showcase the system by highlighting one specific skill, absorption, or as I call it, the ring magnet. Activating this pulls in nearby rings and super rings towards you. This allows you to collect rings from a distance. Wow, this thing actually sounds pretty powerful, but I'm sure it's been properly tested and balanced. So let's equip it, go into a stage, and see if my opponents are able to counter it. You know, I think it might need some adjustments. Take a look at this footage. Here's how many rings you can collect when you don't use the skill. And here's what happens when you use the skill. This ability is so ridiculous that there's almost nothing you can do to counter it unless you happen to have the skill too. I mean, here's another example. I can't collect these rings over here because I'm not standing on the platform. Oh, yes I can! So that was going to be the end of the examples with regards to this skill, but when I was editing this section of the video together, I noticed something even more insane about how powerful it actually is. How the developers designed this stage is that the remaining players are split onto two different pathways standing on top of each other. After the third set of boost rings, the paths merge for the final arena. You can just about see how this starting pathway looks when the camera zooms out for a couple of frames in the footage that I recorded. But when I was playing back the footage in my video editor and I slowed it down, I noticed that the skill wasn't just pulling in the rings from the pathway that I was on, it was also pulling in the rings from the pathway that was above me. And yes, this particular skill is the most notorious one in the game right now, but there's so many others that need adjusting, you can really see why the game hasn't been released worldwide yet. But even if you did reduce the effectiveness of some skills, due to the very nature of this kind of design, you'll never reach the point where all skills are equal. The sad irony with this update is even though the devs fixed the scoring system to allow players to use their favourite characters with no disadvantage, due to the very nature of now including a skill system with unique character abilities, it now means that the game has a character meta system. So the devs essentially reintroduced a problem that their other change fixed. Players are now faced with the dilemma of favouring a character they like over favouring a character that's more likely to win. And you can really screw yourself over if you don't do some serious research into this. You've probably noticed I'm using a lot of trailer footage to showcase the other characters' skills in this section instead of my own. Well guys, there's a really good reason for that. I can't afford to buy anymore. The currency that's tied to the skill system is a premium one, and it's so limited for free-to-play players, they literally have no chance to compete against those who do decide to purchase it with real money, either via the season pass or just outright buying it. Initially, it is possible to get a decent chunk of this currency, but once it's gone, it's very difficult to get more without spending real-world money. And even if you did do all the research and pick the best skills, your problems don't end there, because skills can be upgraded. Increase the area of effect, reduce the cooldown duration, recovery cancellation, and more. Every skill in the game can be improved with upgrades, and yes, upgrading the skills uses the same currency as buying them. Do you see now how free-to-play players will be at a major disadvantage? You'll often see people complaining about how the game isn't out yet because they can't play as a special limited edition character that they happen to like. Guys, no, that's not your biggest concern right now. Once the game is fully released, you will have absolutely no chance against any player that's invested into the skill system. No matter how good at the game you'll be, the disadvantage is so great and the catch-up progression so slow, you'll have to spend real-world money just to get yourself on an equal playing field. It's fine and sometimes even fun to lose against a player who's legitimately better than you, but it's never fun to lose against a player because they spend all their pocket money on an ability that gives them a ridiculous advantage. So at the risk of being completely kicked off the Sonic Rumble content creator program, let's now discuss the red ring situation. I've said it many times, but one, if not the biggest draw of this game, is the costume variants of the main cast, and some of these are sold via the Red Ring store. So players are going to be naturally interested in obtaining these, both in terms of just having a character that they think looks really cool, and the score bonus that comes with it. But just how easy is it to obtain one of these if you're a free-to-play player? Let's focus on this legendary character, Rockstar Rouge. Usual price, 999 red rings, but it is possible to get a discount that drops the price to 729. If you want this character, you have to buy it from the Red Ring store. There's no other way to obtain it in the game. Well boys, after nearly 2 weeks of daily play, I have a grand total of 350 what? I'm not even halfway to the reduced price. So how did I go about attaining these? Well, somewhere between 250 to 300 came from rank rewards, unlocking achievements, and even filling out a survey. How many of you have noticed the problem with each of these methods? Every single source I just mentioned is from a one-off reward, yet this was where the majority of my red rings first came from, and these don't seem to reset once a new season begins. Once I obtained them, that was it. I couldn't farm that method again. So, how do you get red rings as a reliable source if you're a free-to-play player? Well, that's just it. You don't. How many of you watching this video have just realised that despite the fact you've been looking at tons of gameplay footage, not once have you ever seen me collect a red ring? Because gameplay itself doesn't provide you with any. The only reliable method to get red rings for free on a somewhat regular basis is from your emblem progression and a few endless achievements. Both of these methods are painfully slow and don't award very much. Alternatively, just hope you position high enough on the leaderboards to get them as a prize once the current season ends every 2 months. And I'm giving an almighty benefit of the doubt out here, because since pre-season 4 began, they removed the prize, you don't get anything! If you're still not seeing the problem and how restrictive this is to players, let's look at the red ring situation in a different way. Once you get your initial chunk of free red rings, say you spend them all and you're now at 0, how long would it take you to get another legendary character? Well, assuming the leaderboards are actually going to give prizes, even if you somehow finished the season in first place and you had the discount, it would take you between 9 and 10 months. And if there's no discount, the time to unlock a single legendary character is increased to 1 year. I wonder if those people who constantly get angry about not being able to play this game and unlock these characters have realised the sad irony that they probably couldn't unlock them even if they had access. This is one of those occasions where I really hope I've got my calculations wrong, and if I am incorrect, the devs really need to make it clearer which sources of red rings reset, or just give us red rings as drops in stages, because I'm probably not the only player that's come to this conclusion, and once the game gets a worldwide release, the reaction won't be kind. So with all that out of the way, I've got one more thing to say about this update. Here's a couple of things I do like about it. So there's a new boss, and it's quite awesome. You fight on, well, it's kind of like a beehive. As the boss takes more damage, you descend into lower areas of the hive, and each section becomes increasingly more hazardous. Everything about this fight just feels way more fun than the Death Egg robot, and it would be nearly perfect if it wasn't for the fact it has the same big flaw that the robot does. The winner is usually the one who exploits this specific item, and it's very easy to get as this clip shows. But one area where I think the game has drastically improved would be the level design in the new stages. This has addressed my main concern about the original ones, that they were just too easy and didn't really offer much of a challenge. There's way more hazards, and travelling through them just feels way more exciting. The city escape stage is a major highlight. It's such a fun reimagining of that stage. You really do feel like you're controlling an action figure on a playset. It's so much fun to play. So, how do I sum this up? Under the old build, Sonic Rumble was a fun, if not unremarkable experience. The main constraint was that the stages desperately needed to be more of a challenge. You'd probably play it for a week and then just move on, as it didn't really have anything to hook you into coming back for more. With the new update, the fun gameplay is still there, but there's now all this stuff just holding it down. If it's not unbalanced, it's just unfair and frustrating. Once you experience it, you probably won't even last the week before you decide, I'm done with this. You might be able to extend that time a little bit if you decide to party up with friends and have some group shenanigans. Oh yeah, there's a thought. I wonder how many friends I have. Oh. Well, alright. And whilst, no, I can't prove in a court of law that this game is pay to win, it's very difficult to argue against that when you have so many premium systems that give other players a major advantage. I just don't see how you can call this a fair experience for all when player skill isn't the primary method of rewards, but pocket money is. You add onto that how restrictive it is to unlock unique characters, and you'll find that there's very little else to keep you invested. If you're one of these people who are always screaming, release it now, or it's ready, I want to play it, I'm telling you, this game is not ready. Sonic Rumble could be a very fun and truly unique experience, but as it stands right now, the core systems are so unbalanced and the gameplay is skewed to give those who pay into it such an unfair advantage that to play it now would probably mean that you just grow to hate it. The game desperately needs another huge overhaul to make it a fairer experience, so that the best players stand out by their skill and ability and not their willingness to surrender their credit card information. Now, who wants to win 500 red rings that the developers have asked me to give away? Hey guys, congratulations on making it to the end of the video. If you're still interested in playing this game and the community team hasn't banished me to cyberspace yet, I've got a few codes for 500 red rings to give away. I've got 5 of these codes to give away, so what I'll do is I'll pick a few people in the comments section of this video, the first one in the next couple of days, and then the rest when the game is released worldwide. And I'll probably also give 1 or 2 away via my other social media outlets, so you might want to follow me at one of these places too. And yes, they'll still be valid when the game is released globally, so don't worry if you don't have access to the game yet, you'll still be able to redeem them. So there's a few rules before you do decide to enter. You have to be subscribed to my YouTube channel and click the bell notification button, that way you'll be notified if you've won and we can sort out how I send you the prize. And you'll also need to either follow the Sonic Rumble Twitter or YouTube channel. So what do you have to do to win? Well, earlier in the video I said that I unlocked Sonic by buying him from a specific store. But what was the name that I gave that store? Leave a comment below this video for your answer, and if you really want to stand out, maybe include a joke or an interesting fact. I'm just going to pick a winner randomly anyway, but you never know, it might help. If you enjoyed this video and would like to support the work I do further, please consider supporting me via my Patreon page like these amazing people did. Agent Kaz, Ben Malski, Dave Morley, Grace Liu, Nathan Stevenson, Rustic Coolpix, Seracor, Stalinosha 2, That's Yaki Guy, and Tybout Renux. A huge thank you goes out to each and every one of those amazing people, and also to you for checking out this video. Please don't forget to leave a like and let me know what you think of this game, and I'll see you next time.